Let's welcome Oz Rodriguez. He's sitting down with us today to discuss a book that changed his life, Nuestra Parte de Noche, por Mariana Enriquez.
Latin America has sort of the shared history of struggles with dictatorship. My parents both experienced in their childhood dictatorship, political violence, and I think it very much affects them to this day as far as like how they behave. There is something that's inherited from my parents that maybe has affected me.
What are those behavioral cascades? Books. They've saved us from the dark, set our souls on fire, and whispered truths we couldn't ignore. I'm Chris Collins, and this is Books That Changed My Life.
It's both a sort of a book about a father and son, but also at the same time, it's ramifications of the dictatorship in the country of Argentina.
How did Nuestra Parte de Noche change your life?
Oh,
Thanks,
thank
baby.
you. Beautiful cup.
Is that just coffee?
Just coffee. Just
Cheers.
cafe. Gracias. Thank you. I have many questions for you. Tell me about your shoes.
This is a collaboration between Montclair and Rick Owens. I'm a big Rick Owens
Okay.
fan, kind of my uniform,
Okay.
and so they take good care of me.
It's very cool. It's very nice. Got a lot of
It's a long shoelace.
shoelaces. Must take a while to
They're slip-ons.
tie it up.
They're slip-ons.
Okay.
No.
All
Let's
right.
welcome Oz Rodriguez. He's an Emmy Award-winning writer and director. He's worked on SNL. He's written movies, sketches, and TV shows. And he's just authored his first book, The Girl and the Robot. He's sitting down with us today to discuss a book that changed his life, Nuestra Parte de Noche, por Mariana Enriquez.
Boom. Nailed it. Yeah.
Which is
Our share
This
of night
dude
in
right
English.
here.
Yes.
so fun. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Dominican Republic. I was born in Cuba, but I left when I was 5 months old. And
Do you remember?
I do not. I remember when I went back when I was 3. I remember a couple things.
Oh, you went back?
When I was 3 years old, and then I didn't go back again until I was 36 or something. So there was a huge span where I never went back to Cuba.
What is the story about how you ended up leaving or how your parents ended up leaving?
So my mom is Cuban and my dad's Dominican. He went from the DR to Cuba to study medicine. The sort of medical school in Cuba is sort of renowned as far as Latin America, and he wanted to specialize in Cuba. He became a gastrointestinal surgeon. So he went there to university, and
That's how you met your mom?
that's how he met my mom. My mom is an anesthesiologist, so they met in med school, and they're both huge nerds as far as medicine. They love it. So yeah, they met in Cuba. My dad was there for a few years. They got married. I came into the world, and Cuba is Cuba. So my dad and mom wanted me to grow up in the DR. So my dad being Dominican, it was a little easier for us to go from Cuba to the Dominican Republic. So went there when I was 5 months old, grew up in the DR, and that's sort of where I'm from, and all my memories are there. And my parents still live there, my friends still live there, so I consider myself Dominican. I dream in Dominican Spanish.
What is it like growing up there?
Oh, it's great. It's the only experience I have as far as growing up, but the beach is really close. It's super hot. My dad wanted my sister and I to learn English early on, so that's why it doesn't sound like I'm from the Dominican Republic.
Do they have both in school there?
Not in every school. We went to a school that taught English and Spanish, but Spanish is the main language in the Dominican Republic. It's a beautiful country full of just like the greenest sort of jungles and the most beautiful beaches. And I will keep talking about the beach because I don't like to be in the city. I would just prefer to be in the beach if I can. When I go back, I visit my parents. I'm like, cool. All right, should we leave now? So yeah, if I could be anywhere right now, it'd probably be a Dominican beach.
Just sitting
Reading a
there?
book or
Reading a book?
or
Umbrella? No umbrella?
depends on how hot it is. And if it's like noon, I probably want to be under an umbrella because the sun will be blazing. But yeah, I either like to either sit at the beach with a book or go for a walk with either music or an audiobook. I would say I'm not a huge podcaster. I'm either music or audiobook.
Is it the smell and the feeling of sand in your toes and the whole thing that kind of get you?
Yeah, the smell, the people, the
Peace, probably calm.
peace, the food,
Tell me about the food.
the food is delish. I mean,
What's your favorite thing there?
my favorite thing there is this restaurant called Luis Restaurant. Very
Luis
simple. Luis, that's it. He's like,
What was the
my name's Luis.
process
This
of
place is
naming
gonna be called Luis. So there we go.
love
But
it.
it's on the
Have you
north.
met Luis?
I've met Luis many times since I was like maybe 15. I've been going to this place.
Oh, okay.
And it's on the beach, and it's this little shack, and there's tables, but it's seafood, but it's all caught that day. Like they don't open till like noon, so they have to get all the food that they have fish from the ocean that's right there. So if you were to ask for lobster, let's say, first, it's not going to be an insanely expensive lobster. You actually have to go into the freezer and say, I would like this lobster. Out of all the lobsters that they've picked out of the ocean that day, you have to go select the one that will be sacrificed for your belly. If you don't concentrate on that part, it's really cool because you're like, oh,
Is that
amazing.
what you get? Is that your go-to lobster?
Yes, I only eat it at this place. I don't eat lobster anywhere else.
Oh, really?
It's also warm, and it's not like on some cold, soggy bread. Sorry, I'm hating on
Lobster rolls?
Lobster rolls right now, yes. And it comes with a side of rice and beans, but there's also fried fish, which is incredible. Like my wife is a pescatarian, and she said that fried fish was the closest she's felt to eating fried chicken. Like it brought her back to her when she ate fried chicken. It's just delicious, and they make the best beans. And I'm getting hungry. I wish I could be there right now. It's an amazing place. I might have to show you photos later.
Was your mom a good cook?
Yes, she is a good cook. I was fortunate enough that because my mom is Cuban, in my house we ate Cuban and Dominican food, which is pretty similar, but we have certain
Nuances.
difference. Yeah. So that was really exciting. A lot of people in my family cook. Do I? Not really. They are
enjoy
very
it.
bad at sharing the secrets. Like, I maybe have a little more of an analytical mind when it comes to cooking. I've been told that baking might be better for me because I kind of need to know, like,
You gotta measure
this,
the time
that, how
and-
long in the fire. When you ask my mom that question, she's like, yeah, you just put a
Throw a
little
little
this,
in there, yeah.
whatever. And I'm like, well, it's not whatever. It's like, I need to know, so it's as good as your thing. And she's like, I think because she was gatekeeping this information, I never became the great chef that I could have been. So
That was
there
your
you go.
second calling?
That might have been my second calling. So there you go.
What were your interests as a kid?
My interests as a kid were, man, I wish I had a different answer, but the TV was my main interest.
Why do you wish you had a different
I don't
answer?
know, because I spent too much time watching TV. TV, then...
What would you watch on TV?
Well, my mom is a big cinephile, which I think is where I got this affliction, let's say. So she can sit on a weekend and watch like 3 movies in a row. She can just sit on the couch and just blow through 3 movies. And they can all be 3 different level quality movies. She'll still watch and finish them all.
Different genres?
Different genres, different levels of like, classics. Like,
Did she have a favorite movie that she would come back to over and over again?
she has a couple of favorite movies. She would never tell you The Godfather is her favorite movie, Godfather 1 and 2, but she's seen it so many times that it has to be one of her favorite movies,
Yeah.
But she'll never be like, The Godfather, but she's seen it a million times. And then there's a French movie called The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, which is a musical. And that is also one of her favorite movies. And I resisted it for a little while because I'm not the biggest musical lover. Saw it, and it's great. It's incredible.
Saw it like when you were older?
Saw it like 5, well, maybe a little longer, close to 10 years ago. Still, older. And called her and said, you were right. It's great.
So if you watch TV a lot, did you not have a lot of friends that you played with?
I did have friends. I did have like a good amount of friends. I did leave the house, which was good. I did ride bikes and touch the grass, and all my friends became musicians somehow. So I was surrounded a lot by musicians, and I really like music, and I like always interested in the life of a musician just because all my friends are musicians, but there was also a divide because like they were like nerd out about whatever Pearl Jam's latest album, and I was like, yeah, but did you see Fight Club? Did you see The Matrix? Did you see these movies?
Oh, you would revert back
and
to
they're
the
like, yeah,
cinephile?
whatever. Yeah. So yeah, and then like we in the Dominican Republic, we had access to not just, well, we had U.S. television, but we had Spanish television, we had Brazilian television, Venezuela. So it was really cool to just be sort of exposed to all these different television shows, cultures, people, languages from all over the place. So that was really nice to, I didn't know that was happening at the time. I was just watching what interested me. But looking back, I feel like it played a part in my interests because I think they're wide and far between as far as like, I love Pedro Almodóvar and his movies, but I also love Stephen King. And I don't know what the connection is between those, but I think it was from
just high art, right?
Yeah,
like,
just being exposed
well done.
really well-told stories and sort of stories with a personality, with a vision, with a POV. And, in the Dominican Republic is where I actually ended up watching SNL, which doesn't make sense. But I watched SNL, I'm dating myself here. Nirvana was on the show, and I'm like, I like this Nirvana band, and they're, I didn't really have cable. So back then, artists weren't as available as they are now. So I'm like, I'm going to watch this show called Saturday Night Live to see this band I'm really interested in. And as I'm watching the show, I'm like, what is the show? And I'm laughing, and I'm also like learning about culture in the U.S. And through Nirvana, I became a fan of SNL.
Oh, wow.
Through Nirvana and then Pearl Jam. It was like the 1-2 punch in 92. When I was 1 year old, because I was born in 1991. No, I'm kidding.
So how old were you in 1990?
All right, I guess we're getting into these kind of questions. I was 12, 11 maybe.
So I would have been like 18 because I was the class of 90.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Seattle.
Oh, amazing.
So I was in the music scene in Seattle.
Yeah.
And so just very familiar with Pearl Jam, Nirvana, the whole thing. Were your parents readers?
My parents are big readers, big readers. They.
How old were you when you read your first book?
I don't remember. I remember the first book that I chose for myself. Like I was reading books, school through like my parents. But there is this book that I remember picking up when I was like either 12 or 13 that was just so different from what everything else I was being exposed to. And that was Stephen King's It with Pennywise in the cover from the Tim Curry version. And my parents were not a fan because they were like, what are you reading? And then they found out about who Stephen King was, and they're like, this might be satanic, and this crazy clown is scaring me, and it's also 1,000 pages long. They're very worried. And I actually read Misery first. That's kind of what got me into Stephen King. But I remember it sort of just being, it was my second pick for this. But I feel like, I don't know, I assume that some people have mentioned Stephen King, and Stephen King has been talked about a lot. But that really impacted me in a profound way because it was a story unlike what I'd read before, and it was so scary, and it also felt dangerous for me to read it at that time. I don't think it's like the first book I read, but sometimes it feels like the first book I read because it was like, I want to read this, and it's my thing, and it just rocked me.
So it felt very personal because it was your choice and your thing.
Yeah, because I am...
How old do you think you were at that point?
Either 12 or 13.
12 or 13?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the age, too, where you're looking for that independence a little bit.
Yeah. Because I remember reading things like Roald Dahl, for example, which I'm just revisiting again, a little younger, and all these books in Spanish, too. that were sort of assigned in school, or like my parents thought I should read them. But nothing was sort of clicking with me in a way where I'm like, oh, I have to finish this book as soon as possible. Or I'm like taking this book everywhere. And I remember that feeling with it. Because it's also like a book that weighs a lot. So you feel it when it's with you.
It's a doorstop.
Yeah. And it also, like paved the way for me to read doorstop books, which is what my wife calls them. Like, I love a thick book. It just sort of changed my mind as far as like how to dive into a book of that length and sort of cherish the journey that you go on to.
What sort of books did your dad want you to read?
I think there was just a concern. I'm from the Dominican Republic, which is somewhat conservative, somewhat religious.
Catholic?
Catholic, and
good guess.
Yes, yeah, excellent guess. And not that I like grew up in an extremely Catholic household, but it was still present. The presence is undeniable. So
especially in the Latin culture.
Yeah, so there was just a fear of like, do you have to be?
You know what's funny about the Salvador Dali Bibles is that the guy who commissioned him to do that, the reason why he commissioned him is because he was convinced that Dali would become a Catholic after doing it.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't work.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
But that was his.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the art. It was he thought he could convert him by hiring him to illustrate the Bible.
Did not work.
Did not work, but funny.
I'm very curious. I just gifted my wife a book, Dali book. I forget the name, but it's him. It's a book about wines, and it's him illustrating wines and talking about wine. And my wife has a wine shop, so it's one of the best gifts I've ever given her because it's his version of it's like him. It's to get in his mind and see how he approaches wine,
which has got to be a little abstract.
Oh yeah,
because everything he did was abstract.
Yes. Yeah.
What is her wine shop?
It's called Dia Natural Wine. It's in the Studio City. It's been open for like 2.5 years, and we sell natural wine, like the name says. So it's wine that has not had any pesticide or insecticide kind of thing in the farming, and then in the bottling, in the processing, there's no extra chemicals added either. So.
Oh, that's great. We'll have to check it out and support it.
Yes,
that's fun. We drink some wine.
If it wasn't in the morning, I would be drinking with you too.
So kind of take me to the point in life. Where are you at emotionally, mentally, when this book comes into your life?
Let's see.
What were you doing for work at the time?
So I'm a TV and film director. So I have been working in this business for like 15 years now. And I worked at SNL. I've been working in episodic directing. Been directing episodic work. So I get to read a lot of scripts. Or I have to read a lot of scripts. Sometimes I get to, but sometimes I have to. So to be perfectly honest, reading sometimes felt like a chore because I am doing so much reading for work. So sometimes it felt hard to just sit and read a book. So I was doing more audiobooks. I was sort of consuming books through audiobooks. I love to walk. I love to go to bookstores just to wander and see what's out there. And I love a staff recommend. So I went to this bookstore in Brooklyn, and I was just roaming around, and I see this cover. I saw the English version first, and drawn to this, sort of this membered hand with these yellow fingernails. Great name. And so I'm already in visually. But then I do have this thing that when I go to a bookstore and if I see someone whose last name ends in Z, that's usually a Latino person. So I always dig in a little bit more. So yeah, I see the author, Mariana Enriquez. I'm like, well, this person's probably Latina. I see that she is Argentinian, and that was enough for me to then go to the counter and order the version in Spanish, in Espanol. Because Spanish is my first language, and if I can read in Spanish, I'll try to read the original text in Spanish, if that's possible. So, did that. I get the book. Also, while this is happening, I am developing my voice as a writer. I have just done a movie called Vampires versus the Bronx, which I was the writer-director. And that is the official first thing that I've like put out in the world as something that I sat down and hit the keys. And that movie came about because I wanted to tell a story about people that look like me, similar backgrounds, and people that are experiencing things that I've experienced. And I felt like there was a lack of those kind of stories out in the world, in movies and print and anything. So I wrote this movie about these kids in the Bronx who are fighting vampires, who are basically secretly gentrifying the Bronx. And it has a lot of Dominican characters, a lot of Dominican culture, a lot of Dominican jokes. And that was really exciting for me. And it got bought by Netflix and it's out in the world. So I got the itch to keep writing and keep telling stories. And this book, amongst many things, it inspired me to keep pushing myself to keep trying to write, because as anyone that writes knows, it's not easy, or at least not for me. It's sometimes, especially when you're faced with a blank page, it's very daunting. And this was just inspiring, and to this day has pushed me to sort of keep writing and telling stories.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Did you read It by Stephen King in Spanish?
No.
So you read it in English?
That I read it in
when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Wow. So you could do both?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so
although the Spanish version of It looks cool. I forget the translation, but I do like to get the book sometimes in Spanish just because the cover is like you see the
it's
the
totally different,
and sometimes the name
the culture it just feeds the culture.
Yeah.
So my question for you that I am just curious about is, when you're reading a book like this, are you reading it from the perspective of an author, or are you reading it from the perspective of a consumer, or is it both?
I'm reading it as a consumer. Because it's the stories I've done and the work I've done before is mostly in comedy, and Vampires vs. the Bronx is a horror comedy, but it's more akin to like maybe a Goonies and Lost Boys. And this book I just wrote is probably similar to E.T. So I tend to read things that are different from from the things I work on. So I work in comedy a lot. I rarely go home and watch comedy. For some reason, I like a thriller or a horror. This being a horror, this being a Latina writer, and also dealing with the political violence of Argentina and the dictatorship, and talking about that through horror felt really exciting for me, because those are, I'm interested in stories about Latin America that deal with some of the, let's say, the past violence and colonialism and dictatorship through genre. That is sort of a genre of itself that interests me. So this book was sort of hitting a lot of checklist things for me. So it started as just like, I want to read this as a consumer, not necessarily like to be inspired as a writer. But the way this book is put together ended up being very inspiring to me, as far as like how it moves. I think it's divided into 6 parts, and the narrative jumps through time a lot. And the way Mariana Enriquez sort of tells the story, and it feels compelling, and it doesn't feel like, well, now why are we 20 years before? It all sort of feeds into the narrative, was really exciting. And just like in a sort of a general sense, like I said before, I was listening to a lot of books. I was not sort of sitting down and just opening up a book and sitting on a comfortable chair like this one and just like diving in. But this book kind of brought me back to that, sort of that joy of just like sitting, reading. And
it was kind of back to when you were a kid. It was like your choice, your book, your time.
Yeah, and I think it does connect a little bit to me being a kid, and especially in that there's like, it's a multi-generational story, but you meet these characters when they're kids, and then you meet them a little bit older, and you sort of see how past traumas have affected them as they become older. So there's these Stephen King connections that I thought were really, really interesting. And then like once you're like in it, I was in it. I was sucked in, and I just wanted to, one of those feelings where you want to finish it, but you also don't want to finish it. Outside of it being a really fun read and a great book, it just also brought me back to reading, sort of for pleasure.
So give me kind of the premise of the book.
Okay, so this is a book about a man named Juan and his son Gaspar. Juan is a medium for this cult that believes in this sort of demonic presence called the darkness. And Juan is a medium that sort of conjures this evil god, evil demon for the benefit of this cult. And it turns out that his son Gaspar is exhibiting some of the same behaviors. It looks like he will also be a medium. So the book is about this father, Juan, trying to protect his kid from this cult, trying to keep him away so this cult does not take his son. He is not a willing medium. He was kidnapped when he was a kid and became a medium for this cult. So basically, he does not want to give his son Gaspar the same life that he has lived. So a lot of it is sort of them running away from this cult. And that's sort of the pitch of it all. But I think what really gripped me was that it is the story really is about the Argentinian people dealing with dictatorship and the fallout of the dictatorship in the 70s and 80s.
So there's a political undertone.
There is. So this dictatorship called La Junta Militar, which basically there was a coup d'etat on this president, and this group of military leaders became the president or the government, if you will. And their sort of modus operandi was to eliminate anyone that was against them. So the country of Argentina experienced a ton of disappearances. There was a lot of torture, rampant murders, mass graves, and it's just like a real life horror show. And this is Mariana Enriquez sort of way to talk about those events without necessarily becoming a historical book. Like the cult mirrors the dictatorship a lot because they do sort of the same things that the dictatorship did. They kidnap people, they torture people,
There's a lot of violence.
Yes, there's a lot of violence. And this is their cults, the way they conjure their demonic presence. This demonic presence demands, it wants to eat, so it demands bodies and stuff. It's both a sort of very much a book about a father and son and that relationship and what we inherit from our families and the baggage and trauma that we can inherit from our parents. But also at the same time, it's the ramifications of the dictatorship in this country over a course of like around 20 years.
Do you believe in mediums and mysticism?
I want to. I believe them more in the printed world or on screen, but I have not had any experience that has made me believe in such a thing, but I am maybe more agnostic. I just maybe one day it will happen, but I don't necessarily subscribe to any kind of mysticism, if you will. But I do enjoy a story about it.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're kind of attracted to that, but it really is abstract, right? In a sense.
I think so, yeah, because I even as a young kid, I remember I was more interested in the Bible and Catholicism as almost the story parts of it, not necessarily like the faith and you have to do this. But I'm like, tell me about this guy who got swallowed by a whale. That sounds crazy, you know? Like,
yeah,
that was sort of my interest. And at some point, I remember like I was baptized at a first communion. And at some point, my mom was like, "We're good. You don't have to keep going to these things because like you're gonna be a nuisance because you're asking too many questions." She was like, "You're fine. You just don't."
Because you were challenging it.
I mean, lightly challenging, but I think she saw the signs of like because I'm just asking her like, well, I don't remember the exact questions, but you know, like, well, this, but what about this kind of thing? And I think at one point she was like, you're good. I think my mom's Cuban, and when Castro came to power, he really separated church and state. And so the church was not as involved in the government, and it was one of the few Latin American countries where this religion wasn't so integral into politics and into everyday life. So she sort of grew up in this era or time where being as religious as people are now in the Dominican Republic wasn't as, I don't want to say it was frowned upon, but not as essential as it is to like the Dominican Republic. So she always sort of held her faith to herself. And I have a couple uncles that are a little more scholarly, and they always challenge her as far as like, why do you believe in this thing? And she says that she saw something that made her believe, and she's never even told me what it was. And she's like, hold her belief, and that's it. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But she believes in what she believes.
Like she witnessed something?
She witnessed something. She saw something. I don't know what it is.
But she won't tell you.
She won't tell me. I think it's from the years of mockery from her brothers, my uncles. But she believes in God or something because of this. But because I wasn't there to witness that. All I had was questions. She was basically like, it is fine. You do not have to keep going to these things that you're getting bored at and falling asleep anyway.
Yeah. It's funny. I grew up, my parents were missionaries in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And my stepdad was a pastor, and people would always come up to me and say, oh, you're going to be a pastor someday. And I'd be like, no, I'm not.
Right.
I'd be like, oh, no, you are. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And they'd be like, remember Jonah and the whale? And I'm like, so I remember being a little kid and swimming in the ocean thinking, oh, the whale's going to get me.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, spit me up in
Yeah.
the Mediterranean or something. I don't know how that would work.
And it kind of happened recently. There was a guy who got swallowed by a whale for a second. I don't know if you read that.
Yeah, I did. His name wasn't Jonah.
Yeah, no.
And he didn't change, I don't think.
No, he was just like, I don't know. It was like wet and weird. And then I was out. I'm like, oh, that's why you elaborate on the story and you make it a little more fantastical. So there you go.
Yeah, it's better to write, but it is funny. So what about reading it in Spanish kind of rekindled that? Like what happens in your mind, that shift of experiencing it in a different way?
Well, I think the first thing is just like this sense of like pride and like excitement, like, oh my God, this is a killer book in Spanish, like from Latin America. So there's already a sense of like awesome, it's like we're in the conversation and it's a real quality book. So it's that's sort of the first feeling. I'm like, oh man, this is so exciting. I can't wait for her to do more stuff. I hope everybody gets to read it. So that's sort of the first feeling. I live in Los Angeles. I work in film and TV here in the States, so I'm mostly speaking in English every day. So it was nice to just go back to my first language and sort of the almost like this other person that I am, where I get to speak. The person that speaks Spanish was really sort of well-fed creatively through this book. So that was also really exciting. And like I mentioned before, Latin America has sort of the shared history of struggles with dictatorship, with colonialism, with political violence. And those are things I gravitate to as far as like stories I'm interested in. And, there's a version of this that could be written in Chile, in Brazil, in DR, as far as like we've had our dictatorship, we've had our disappearances, we've had our authoritarian governments that use torture to get results, I guess. So it feels like there's this common story there between Latin America. And I am really attracted to those.
What are your views on that? What are your views on power like that, in the sense of authoritarian power at all costs?
Well, power corrupts, and it always seems to be the beneficiaries seem to be sort of this elite group, 1%. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really become about the people of the country. And then a lot of these governments, their way to sort of silence the opposition is just straight up murder, disappearance, kidnapping. And a lot of that is kidnapping, disappearing, murdering young people in the arts, young people that are trying to have a different point of view. And I think maybe as someone that, works in the arts, I think that always sort of resonates with me as far as like expressing yourself through art and putting your life on the line.
Because good art challenges authority or challenges conventional thinking.
Correct.
And what you want to do if you're an authoritarian is you want people to just follow a certain mindset.
Right.
And that's so in the book, that's the cult, right?
That's
It's
the
kind of
cult.
like the cult.
And the cult is the dictatorship is happening there at the same time, but it's really more about the cults who are doing sort of the same practices as the dictatorship, as far as like kidnapping, torturing people. In the book, it's for their gains because that's how they get access to this sort of demon. But in real life, the government is sort of erasing all the opposition, which is something that has happened in the Dominican Republic, in Cuba, like I said, Chile, Brazil, all these other countries. My parents both experienced, or in their childhood, dictatorship. Like my mom was around 10 when Castro came to power. And then in the Dominican Republic, there was a dictator for 30 years, from 1930 to 1960s. So by the time he is assassinated, my dad is around 10, 11. So they have grown up in these systems, and I think it very much affects them to this day as far as like how they behave. Like my mom and dad are always like they're always like they don't want to share secrets with, but if they don't know you, they won't tell you. Like there's always like, well, you know who's listening, kind of thing. And I think that all comes from that. And I think there's always
Because you gotta believe in the cults 100%.
Yeah.
And any defectors or anybody who is challenging it is called out and reported, and part of the cult is turning each other in too, right?
Yeah, and I have an uncle in Cuba who had to leave because he was talking about Castro and the government in a way that was, it was at a coffee shop, so it wasn't like he's rallying the troops against him, but it was definitely a dissenting voice, if you will. He ended up losing his job. He was a teacher at university, which was like his favorite job. Like he was just like, he really loved teaching. So he has to leave in like a matter of days with his wife and his young son, and they have to go to Spain. So that is my mom's oldest brother. So that is, you're growing up with that kind of thing that happens to you. I think there's a hesitance to like maybe express yourself fully in public.
So yeah, there's a part of the book that I thought was interesting, and it's interesting because I thought, coming in here, I thought this was more about you, but it's actually probably more about your parents than anything. But it says
maybe it's
so the dad is talking to his son, and he says, "You have something of mine. I passed on something of me to you, and hopefully it isn't cursed. I don't know if I can leave you something that isn't dirty, that isn't dark, or share of night."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a DiCaprio gift right there. That's the title. I also didn't think this would become a little bit of a therapy session, but yeah, much like this book where you get into what's inherited from the family, and is not just his dad, but also his mom and the rest of the family. Yeah, I feel like there is something that's inherited from my parents and their shared history with like dictatorships and political violence that maybe has affected me as far as this book. So yeah, it's really, I think we've had a breakthrough here. I thought this was about me and Stephen King, but it might be about my parents.
Yeah, so what are those behavioral cascades? Like, I mean, we all have stuff that happens to us in childhood that we're experiencing later on in life. It's amplified, right? Like, if you lose control when you're a kid, or you feel helpless, and when you're an adult, you kind of want control, or,
right.
It's always amplified, but you're not quite aware of it sometimes. It just becomes how you exist in the world.
Right.
How did that experience for your parents, or what is the darkness that we're talking about here in reference to you? Like, what are those behavioral cascades?
Well, if we're gonna get into it, I feel like it's like I think it might even point to like why I was so nervous to sit down and talk to you. I think it's maybe their communication wasn't the best because there were so many things that they were holding on to, that now through just being an adult and talking to them as adults and also therapy, I've sort of seen how that has affected me now. Loving parents, I obviously never had any of the kind of violence that happens in this book. They were very supportive. Like your story about people telling you that sort of assuming that you were going to be in a missionary rings true to me. Like everybody was like, oh, obviously you'll be in medicine because your parents are that. But it turns out that both myself and my sister chose the arts instead of medicine, and they were always very supportive to the point where like my dad actually didn't even want me to study medicine because like him and my mom have basically devoted their life to medicine, and for some reason he didn't want me to do that. I always appreciate and cherish the fact that they were very open to me pursuing this crazy thing, filmmaking. But yeah, I think there's sometimes a hesitancy to communicate or put myself fully out there that I think comes from my parents, and I've noticed that some of that might come from the environment that they grew up in.
Because in a sense, you're behind the scenes mostly.
Yeah.
That's probably more comfortable, right? Like being in front of the camera isn't as comfortable.
Yes.
And you think that comes from that?
I think there's probably a little bit of that, but I think it's also like, I'll use my wife for example. Like my wife can sit down and have an open conversation with anyone and just get into it with anyone. I think for me, if I'm going to have a conversation where I give some of myself or like a full conversation, I think I've had to feel like there's a little bit of trust, and I sometimes not the best part, I guess, because I need to sort of feel safe before I engage in a meaningful conversation, maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way. Like I don't like small talk. Like I prefer deeper connections that have substance.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I hate it. Like how are you? Like it's like the small talk is boring to me. It just feels routine and automatic.
Yeah, I struggle with
nobody really
that.
means it. Like when they ask you how your day is, they don't want to know.
Yeah.
They're just doing it out of a formality or whatever. I actually would like to know how your day is. Like I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I crave deeper conversations and relationships in a sense. And I'm sure it has something to do with the way that I grew up. And I think it's that I felt like the adults always said that this is how you should live.
Yeah.
And you should be a Christian. And if you're a Christian, everything will work out. Mm-hmm. But nothing worked out. Mm-hmm. They would follow this narrative blindly. And you're just looking at it. As a kid, I just remember looking and going, you guys are all miserable. You're cheating. You're but you're saying that basically, if we are good people, we'll be blessed, but we're good, and every time something bad happens, it's our fault because the math just didn't make sense. Yeah. And I always felt like it was all very superficial. Like the thing in the church, like, oh, praise the Lord, God bless. It's like, huh? Yeah. Like what? People are hurting. Yeah. Like this isn't fixing you're not fixing anything with this. Yeah. Like,
there's also the Dominicans are joyful. We love a gathering. We love music. We love to party. We love to dance. And I feel like on Saturdays a lot of sinning, a lot of sinful behavior that gets washed away on Sunday for the Lord.
Yeah.
And I just felt like so.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. As a kid, it was hard for me to make that math work.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, but, and it's like, oh okay, yeah, but, okay. Like, but doesn't make sense for me. I'm trying to rationalize human behavior and outcomes, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I know part of my thing is growing up as a missionary kid, like I wore clothes that were donated. I would get made fun of. Like I always felt kind of inferior. So as soon as I could work and do my own thing, I wanted to make money and have security. And probably why I have all these books and I'm wearing these shoes or whatever is a cascade from that, right? In the sense that I wanted to make my own money and control my destiny. I didn't want to leave it to chance or externalize it to whether I was good or not on that day.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
No, like that.
It felt like small talk, like to me.
No, the shoe stuff really rings true because I remember just having one pair of Nikes when I was growing up and being like, oh, I love these Air Force Ones. And then once you win, you earn a little bit of money, then all of a sudden I'm just buying too many sneakers, and now I've like stopped.
But only because you're out of closet space.
Well, I will tell you honestly what made me stop. I saw these like tech bro dudes in New York with like these really nice Jordans, and I was like, I don't like this. So that was it.
See, I go more obscure.
I think I need to go more obscure.
I'll introduce you to my person at Rick if you want. Okay, so kind of back to your style of reading. When you read a book, do you read a book before you go to sleep at night? Do you go hide in an office somewhere? What is your process?
I try not to do a lot of reading at night in bed, because that's just a recipe for failure as far as or a success if I'm trying to go to bed, to sleep. I usually read, like I said, I love reading on the beach, but no, I read while the sun's out. Obviously, it depends on work. If I'm working on some production, I might read at night or read on the weekends, but let's say like right now I'm in between jobs. I like to sit outside and read. So there's a lot of porch reading in my house or backyard reading.
How is that process different from your process of writing? So when you were writing The Girl and the Robot, is it the same process or is it different?
It's somewhat different. Like I have an office and I do a lot of work there, but sometimes I do take the laptop outside and sit in the backyard. I think I just need to, hear the birds and see what they're telling me that day. But
do you do it when you're in the mood or is it scheduled?
It depends. It's a lot of in the mood, but I'm trying to schedule myself a little bit more just for like a whole life thing. I'm trying to be a little more scheduled in life to get a little more order. But sometimes it just strikes the mood whenever it strikes the mood.
Or you hit a vein and it's coming out and you can't stop, kind of a thing?
Yeah, but I'm also have a wife, I have a partner, so I don't want to be the guy who's like at 8 p.m. instead of having a nice dinner, nice glass of wine with my wife, I'm like, sorry, one more thing. So I am trying to schedule so that I am not a slave to work. I have been, not as much in writing, but in my directing work, sometimes I'm a little too in that pocket and not experiencing life.
You're just too focused on the work.
Yeah.
But when you're writing, it's just you, right?
In the case of the book, it was my first. I've written screenplays, but I had not written any book, anything in prose. So I partner with Claribel Ortega, who is a middle grade author, and that was a collaboration. We weren't together in the same room, so it was still somewhat similar as far as like, here's a chapter, send it off, or put it on Google Doc, and she, Claribel takes it and gives it their spin. But yeah, I guess it is still similar as far as like me in the office. But with this notes app, sometimes it's me on the phone, just writing some stuff down, which is not the best way to do it. It's
always in the back of your mind, right?
Yeah.
When you're doing it.
And I like to go for walks a lot. I think when I'm stuck, I like to go for a walk. Yeah, just walks really help me just sort of tune into.
Have you ever heard about Aaron Sorkin's routine that he does?
I don't think so.
When he gets stuck, he goes and takes a shower and changes his clothes.
Okay.
And so...
Well, the shower is a very magical place. There is some weird alchemy in there, because sometimes you do
you hit
crack
that
things.
Automatic hypnosis kind of...
Something happens.
Let's go.
You're like,
kind of like when you're driving.
Should be this instead of that. Which, like, sometimes I get on a walk, but like because the walk is a longer experience, maybe it feels more impactful because the shower is like just like a couple minutes in, all of a sudden you're like unlocking a thing that you had never even thought of. So I've also now really into the sort of dictation of it all, because I'm trying not to do this as I walk and run into something. So I'm like, if I have an idea, I'm trying to put it on the notes. And I'm just like, this happened, and having the Siri
dictate it?
Dictate it, yeah.
When you read back the dictation, is it workable?
It's workable for me. If you read it, you'd be like, who? What? Where?
Yeah.
But it makes sense, like, for me. Because also Siri's not great yet at, like, fully like getting all the things.
Yeah, see, I've struggled with that. I've tried that.
But at least it like gets the thing that I feel like if I don't put this down, it will escape. But then also, if you don't put it down, and if it's a good idea, it will come back at some point, I feel.
Do you have any other rituals that you do before you write? Like, do you eat a certain breakfast or anything like that?
No.
Coffee?
Yeah, maybe coffee. Coffee, I can't do anything without coffee. The coffee is the key that unlocks the day. And if I can't have that coffee, I can't work. And I think also like I have a mocha pot and it's a process. I make coffee in the house. So that is maybe my most spiritual moment of the day where I have my coffee time. And
So if you start to get stuck, you just get up and go for a walk? That's what breaks it?
Either stuck or like a little bit of fatigue as far as like you grinding for a while. I always go for a walk. And then having a dog too, she needs to go out anyway. So she gets the benefit of going on long walks where I'm like figuring out something.
What do they say? Killing two birds with one stone?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Tell me about the book. So, Girl and the Robot. What is the premise?
The Girl and the Robot is a middle grade book. What
does middle grade mean?
Middle grade means from readers 8 to 12. But really, any reader. I mean, not really, but an adult can read it, I think. But it's written for 8 to 12, and I think the prose, the chapters are a little bit shorter, so it's written with that age range in mind. So yeah, this is an idea I had that first I was like, well, maybe it could be a movie, but then I kept digging into it and it felt like there were a lot more strands in there that I want to develop. And my manager actually suggested me trying a middle grade book. And I was like, let's do it. I love to throw myself into challenges. So it's the story of Mimi Perez. She is a Dominican-American young girl in Brooklyn, New York. And she's amazing at fixing things. She'll fix your phone, she'll fix your camera, she'll fix your printer. And all this she learned with her dad, who had an e-repair shop. He would fix electronics. So Mimi comes from a Dominican family. Her parents are immigrants. In the beginning of the story, her dad gets deported. Now Mimi is out there trying to fix things, trying to make a little bit of money. She wants to hire a lawyer to get her dad back. And as she's doing this, she's pushing away her family. She's pushing away her friends. She doesn't have time for those people. She has a mission. She has to bring back her dad. Now, one night, a robot from space crash lands into her Brooklyn neighborhood, and she goes to this robot's aid, and because she's a really good whiz with electronics, she ends up fixing this robot and befriending this robot, and the journey of the book is trying to get this robot to reunite with its robot family that has also crashed into Brooklyn. And as she's doing that, of course, there's federal agents that have heard about this robot, so they're chasing Mimi and the robot. Through this journey, she also learns how to cope with her father's absence and sort of embrace her community, her friends, and her family again.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Is there an overarching lesson in it that you hope subconsciously kind of takes hold?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like one of the things that we always talked about was sort of the value of community, not just family, but also friends. And I think that's one of the main themes that I think are very important. And I think it's also a way for me to humanize and also write a story about an immigrant family and sort of dive into what happens after a family's separated and also what makes this family similar to all of us, and especially Mimi. She comes from the immigrant family. She is Dominican American. She was born in the States. She's a regular kid. She loves, she loves anime and loves to fix things. So I think it was. I just wanted to tell a story about immigrants, but also Dominicans, and hopefully have readers empathize with them and their struggle.
Is it vulnerable for you as an artist when you put something out? Like when you put The Girl and the Robot out?
Yeah. It's Yeah, yeah. There's no other way to say it, but yes, it's just like it's out there, and you hope people are into it. But I think there's also an aspect of like it's also liberating once it's done and it's out there. And now I'm moving on to the next thing. I'm writing a second middle grade book, so obviously excited about this and want people to read it, and hopefully it's a success. But I'm also like, that's out there. I'm now moving on to my next problem. But yeah, it is. Yeah, you are vulnerable, but I think it's also something that I try not to think about too much because then I feel like I wouldn't get out of bed or do anything. So
Yeah.
So there is. I do think about that, and sometimes I'm like willfully ignorant of the fact that I am putting so much of myself out there. Like this book has so many, it's in English, but there's a lot of sayings in Spanish that are strictly from my mom. Like it's just verbatim things that she says. So like there's a lot of me in this book. And
Did your mom read it?
She has read it.
What did she say?
In English, but there's no Spanish translation. She's very proud, and there was a lot of tears, and there was a phone call with a lot of crying. So she's very proud, and my dad hasn't read it yet, but my mom did read it, and
Did she recognize the stuff that was about her?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah,
Oh, that's so sweet.
And then all the names
That had to feel good.
Yeah, all the names are also family members. So like, I think she more than anyone really sees sort of the threads that connect and like the names and the things. So yeah, she was very excited.
That has to feel really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your dad waiting for?
I think my mom read my mom was at home and she just took one of the advanced copies. She's like, this is mine. I was like, well, I would like to give you the proper version. She's like, you can give me that too. So they just got it this week. So I think my dad's diving in. So a month from now, if he hasn't read it, I don't know what the hell his excuse is. But yes, he was just waiting for like the proper book to come out. My mom's like, I'll take this.
She went for it. That's beautiful. Okay, for the big question.
Uh-oh.
How did Nuestra Parte de Noche change your life?
All right. Well, I think I was excited to bring this book because there are other books like it, which we touched upon, that have changed my life throughout the years, especially my younger years. So there's, another book is like 100 Years of Solitude, which I love, and The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, which is about a Dominican, I also loved, or something like The Open Veins of Latin America, which is a book only about the struggles of Latin America under sort of the colonial oppression and dictatorship. Those books sort of really impacted me in my youth, but I wanted to talk about something recent because I feel like this also changed my life, and it doesn't all have to be about books that sort of changed my life as a kid. This changed my life because after reading this book, I sort of fell in love with reading again, and that's something I value to this day because, like as I mentioned before, I was not reading. I was mostly enjoying books through audio, and I was reading screenplays a lot. So honestly, reading almost felt tedious to me, and I just have to read a bunch of scripts every day. So after reading a bunch of scripts every day, opening a book felt like a chore, and this really vanquished all those feelings, and it also inspired me as a writer to keep pursuing the idea of telling stories that mean something to you, telling stories that are authentic to you, and being as specific as possible, because this is a book about an Argentinian family and the struggles of Argentina. I've never even been to Argentina, but I was very sort of connected and sort of tuned into the way Argentinians speak right away. They have their own slang. So it just pushed me into telling my own stories. And also really impressed by how this author not only told a really fun supernatural horror story, but also address all this political trauma that the country has lived through. And being a fan of the Latin American history, that was really really impressive. It inspired me to maybe deal with some of our colonial horrors that we've had in the Dominican Republic in my own writing. Even though everything I've worked on is very different from this, but I keep going back to this book because I feel like there was a certain like eureka moment after this, sort of being inspired to tell my own stories and sort of put myself out there.
It's great. Anything else you want to talk about?
Let's see. I just did a documentary for SNL called Ladies and Gentlemen, 50 Years of SNL Music, which I am extremely proud of. It's on Peacock. And
I've seen that, actually.
Oh, amazing.
Because I saw a thing, Questlove talking about it.
Yeah, Questlove and I directed that. And
what is he like to work with?
He's awesome. He is such a fountain of information as far as music. I working at SNL, my favorite thing about being there was the access to these amazing musicians that are playing there every week. And on Thursday, when they have the rehearsals, you are able to see all these crazy people just like right there. You get to see Paul McCartney right there. I thought I knew about music, but obviously when you hang out with Amir, it's like, oh, this is on another level.
Oh, you call him Amir?
Well, that's his name. So
that's his name?
Yeah.
He's Questlove to...
Yeah, Questlove to the masses.
That's funny.
But yeah, on the phone, he's Amir. No, he's an awesome collaborator. He knows so much. And it was a dream project because we shot it for like about a year and a half, but then we also talked about it for 6 months. So just being in this brain trust with him and sort of trying to figure out what the stories we were going to tell was incredible.
Well, it's a unique perspective because it's not just about the performances.
Yeah, so
which
right.
makes it special.
Yeah,
what was that process where you kind of flipped the perspective a little bit?
Well, the assignment was a documentary about the music on SNL. But as we were talking about it, like the first bad idea was like the best 50 performances, whatever. But immediately we're like, there's not like a lot of narrative threads there. And we knew that we also didn't want it to be a chronological thing of like the 70s, 80s, 90s. So in our discussions, we realized how important music is to the show because it's not just the bands that play there. It's also the sketches with music, the Lonely Island, the SNL band. So it just seems like the music is an engine for that show.
And the time we are in.
Right. And
because that's a big part of it too, right?
The time capsule of it all.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about pop music is around, 75 years old or something like that, if you like had to give it a time. And SNL has been around for such a big chunk of that. And now it's not only doing like American music and English music, now it's gone international. Now like you have a K-pop band like BTS there, or you have Bad Bunny there who's singing in Spanish. He's not even singing in English. It just felt like SNL was such a key player to music and through the years. And so that was something to talk about. And we knew there were certain stories that we wanted to talk about, like Sinead, for example. And I was there all the times that Kanye went there. And every time he went there, it was something. So like that was something we wanted to address. And like we knew about this Rage Against the Machine story where they got kicked out. So they were like stories that we wanted to tell, but also like wanted to talk about how important music is to this show itself, to SNL.
Well, and really SNL is the only show out there that presented music in that way, because it feels like the musical guests that come on there, just from a consumer with no connection to it, it feels like it's like a staff pick in a sense. Like it's always a little on the cutting edge. Like
right.
you'll see a band on there before they're
right.
famous in a sense.
Yeah.
So there's like a curation of good taste of kind of being on the inside of something.
Yeah, totally. There is, and even that is so fascinating how they pick the band, because they want a band that's like on the cusp, but they also want a band that has experience live. Like they don't want to bring in someone that will not be a success in the show. Like they want, like for example, Olivia Rodrigo, it was her second performance ever. So they already knew that she had done it in the Brit Awards or something. Somewhere in England, she had been on TV and she'd been fine. So that was like a perfect example where she's like coming up, but she's comfortable enough on stage that she will succeed on SNL. Because I think the show not only wants to have a good show, but it also wants the artist to have a good performance. So yeah, it's just fascinating to get into sort of the nitty gritty of it all, and then to like sit down with all these amazing artists was really so cool. Like, you know, the documentary has Bad Bunny, as I said, Billie Eilish, Mick Jagger, Timberlake, DMC from Run DMC, just like a smattering of amazing people. And full circle, I got to meet Eddie Vedder because of this documentary. So it all worked out.
I will tell everybody, if you just watch the beginning of it, you'll be blown away because the intro is incredible. Like I watched it 2 or 3 times, came in and played it for everybody here.
Oh, amazing.
And the editing and the way that that's pieced together is insane. I don't know, what is it, like 6 or 7 minutes?
7 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
It only took 11 months.
To edit that part?
Yes.
It looks like it. Like it's a piece of art.
Yeah.
The way that it's put together.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really exciting.
Probably gave me a couple gray hairs.
SNL gave me most of my gray hairs. Yes. I've always been destined to have gray hair, but SNL definitely accelerated the grayness. No doubt about it. I didn't even drink coffee before SNL. Can you believe that?
Yeah, you probably developed some unhealthy
This is
habits.
delicious. Like I've always like respected the sort of the process of making coffee. It's really important in my family and the Dominican Republic too. And like if you go to someone's house, they'll always offer you coffee. So coffee's like a big thing, and I always like loved it, but I never, or loved the idea of it, but I never consumed it until SNL. Coffee break.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for
really
having me.
fun.
This has been awesome, and we had breakthroughs. We had fun, and I feel I'm going to call my parents and tell them I learned a few things.
Tell them they did a great job.
And I would recommend this, but I don't think they can get through it because when it gets into horror, it really gets into horror. It's some gruesome stuff.
Yeah, that's so fascinating that you're into horror like that. Like I couldn't read it. There's no way.
Yeah.
I would have nightmares.
Yeah.
Like I can't watch a horror movie.
I don't know why. I love them.
Yeah, I have friends like you that can do it.
My wife will never watch a horror movie with me. I go to the theater by myself and sit and watch Hereditary and be like, yes.
No, I get scared. I'm a big
I love
one.
it.
So fun.
Yeah.
Good.